All right, so we read chapter one. Chapter one was him getting to the Count's castle. I was gonna save it to the morning, but it seems a little bit more fitting to read it at night, and it's rainy, so the setting is almost right. Chapter two. Jonathan Harker's journal continued. 5 May. I must have been asleep, for certainly if I had been fully awake, I must have noticed the approach of such a remarkable place. In the gloom, the courtyard looked of considerable size, and as several dark ways led from it under great round arches, it perhaps seemed bigger than it really is. I have not yet been able to see it by daylight. When the caliche stopped, the driver jumped down and held out his hand to assist me to alight. Again, I could not but notice his prodigious strength. His hand actually seemed like a steel vice that could have crushed mine if he had chosen. Then he took out my traps and placed them on the ground beside me as I stood close to a great door, old and studded with large iron nails, and set in a projecting doorway of massive stone. I could see even in the dim light that the stone was massively carved, but that the carving had been much worn by time and weather. As I stood, the driver jumped again into his seat and shook the reins. The horses started forward, and trap and all disappeared down one of the dark openings. I stood in silence where I was, for I did not know what to do. Of bell or knocker there was no sign. Through these frowning walls and dark windows openings, it was not likely that my voice could penetrate. The time I waited seemed endless, and I felt doubts and fears crowding upon me. What sort of place had I come to, and among what kind of people? What sort of grim adventure was it on which I had embarked? Was this a customary incident in the life of a solicitor's clerk sent out to explain the purchase of a London estate to a foreigner? Solicitor's clerk. Mina would like that. Solicitor. For just before leaving London, I got a word that my examination was successful, and I am now a full-blown solicitor. I began to rub my eyes and pinch myself to see if I were awake. It all seemed like a horrible nightmare to me, and I expected that I should suddenly awake and find myself at home with the dawn struggling in through the windows, as I had now and again felt in the morning after a day of overwork. But my flesh answered the pinching test, and my eyes were not to be deceived. I was indeed awake and among the Carpathians. All I could do now was to be patient and to wait the coming of the morning. Just as I had come to this conclusion, I heard a heavy step approaching behind the great door and saw through the chinks the gleam of a coming light. Then there was a sound of rattling chains and the clanking of massive bolts drawn back. A key was turned with the loud grating noise of long disuse, and the great door swung back. Within stood a tall old man, clean shaven save for a long white mustache, and clad in black from head to toe, without a single speck of color about him anywhere. He held in his hand an antique silver lamp, in which the flame burned without chimney or globe of any kind, throwing the long quivering shadows as it flickered in the draught of the open door. The old man motioned me with his right hand with a courtly gesture, saying in excellent English, but with a strange intonation. Saying in excellent English, but with strange intonation. Welcome to my house. Enter freely and of your own will. He made no motion of stepping to meet me, but stood like a statue, as though his gesture of welcome had fixed him into stone. The instant, however, that I had stepped over the threshold, he moved impulsively forward, and holding out his hand, grasped mine with a strength which made me wince, an effect which was not lessened by the fact that it seemed as cold as ice, more like the hand of a dead than a living man. Again he said, welcome to my house. Come freely, go safely, and leave something of the happiness you bring. The strength of the handshake was so much akin to that which I had noticed in the driver, whose face I had not seen, that for a moment I doubted if it were not the same person to whom I was speaking. So to make sure, I said interrogatively, Count Dracula? He bowed in a courtly way as he replied, I am Dracula, and I bid you welcome, Mr. Harker, to my house. Come in. The night air is chill, and you must need to eat and rest. As he was speaking, he put the lamp on a bracket on the wall, and stepping out, took my luggage. He had carried it in before I could forestall him. I protested, but he insisted, Nay, sir, you are my guest. It is late, and my people are not available. Let me see to your comfort myself. He insisted on carrying my traps along the passage and then up a great winding stair and along another great passage, on whose stone floor our steps rang heavily. At the end of this, he threw open a heavy door, and I rejoiced to see within a well-lit room in which a table was spread for supper, and on whose mighty hearth a bright fire of logs, freshly replenished, flamed and flared. The Count halted, putting down my bags, closed the door, and crossing the room, opened another door which led into a small octagonal lit by a single lamp, and seemingly without a window of any sort. Passing through this, he opened another door and motioned me to enter. It was a welcome sight, for here was a great bedroom well lighted and warmed with another log fire, also added to but lately, for the top logs were fresh, which sent a hollow roar up the wide chimney. The Count himself left my luggage inside and withdrew, saying, before he closed the door, you will need, after your journey, to refresh yourself by making your toilet. I trust you will find all you wish. When you are ready, come into the other room where you will find your supper prepared. The light and warmth of the Count's courteous welcome seemed to have dissipated all my doubts and fears. Having then reached my normal state, I discovered that I was half famished with hunger. So making a hasty toilet, I went into the other room. I found supper already laid out. My host, who stood on the one side of the great fireplace, leaning against the stonework, made a graceful wave of his hand to the table and said, I pray you, be seated and sup how you please. You will, I trust, excuse me that I do not join you, but I have dined already and I do not sup. I handed him the sealed letter which Mr. Hawkins had entrusted to me. He opened it and read it gravely. Then, with a charming smile, he handed it to me to read. One passage of it, at least, gave me a thrill of pleasure. I must regret that an attack of gout, from which Milady I am, from which malady I am a constant sufferer, forbids absolutely any traveling on my part for some time to come. But I'm happy to say that I can send a sufficient substitute, one in whom I have every possible confidence. He is a young man full of energy and talent in his own way and of a very faithful disposition. He is discreet and silent and has grown into manhood in my service. He shall be ready to attend on you when you will on to attend on you when you will during his stay, and shall take your instructions in all matters. The Count himself came forward and took off the cover of a dish, and I fell to at once on an excellent roast chicken. This, with some cheese and a salad and a bottle of old Tokay, of which I had 2 glasses, was my supper. During the time I was eating it, the Count asked me many questions as to my journey, and I told him by degrees all I had experienced. By this time I had finished my supper, and by my host's desire, had drawn up a chair by the fire and begun to smoke a cigar. By this time I had finished my supper, and by my host's desire, had drawn up a chair by the fire and began to smoke a cigar which he offered me, at the same time excusing himself that he did not smoke. I had now an opportunity of observing him, and found him a very marked physiognomy. His face was a very strong, a key line, with high bridge of the thin nose, and peculiarly arched nostrils, with lofty domed forehead, and hair growing scantily around the temples, but profusely elsewhere. His eyebrows were massive, almost meeting over the nose, and with bushy hair that seemed to curl in its own profusion. The mouth, was so far as I could see it under the heavy mustache, was fixed and rather cruel looking, with peculiar sharp white teeth. These protruded over the lips, whose remarkable rudiness showed astonishing vitality in a man of his years. For the rest, his ears were pale, and at the tops extremely pointed. The chin was broad and strong, and the cheeks firm through thin. The general effect was one of extraordinary pallor. Hitherto, I had noticed the backs of his hands as they lay on his knees in the firelight, and they had seemed rather white and fine. But seeing them now close to me, I could not but notice that they were rather coarse, broad with squat fingers. Strange to say, there were hairs in the center of the palm. The nails were long and fine and cut to a sharp point. As the Count leaned over and his hands touched me, I could not repress a shudder. It may have been in his breath was rank, but a horrible feeling of nausea came over me, which do what I would, I could not conceal. The Count, evidently noticing it, drew back, and with a grim sort of smile, which showed more he had yet done his protuberant teeth, sat himself down again on his own side of the fireplace. We were both silent for a while, and as I looked towards the window, I saw the first dim streak of the coming dawn. There seemed a strange stillness over everything. But as I listened, I heard, as if from down below in the valley, the howling of many wolves. The Count's eyes gleamed, and he said, "Listen to them, the children of the night, what music they make." Seeing, I suppose, some expression in my face strange to him, he added, "Ah, sir, you dwellers in the city cannot enter to the feelings of the hunter." Then he rose and said, "But you must be tired. Your bedroom is all ready, and tomorrow you shall sleep as late as you will. I have to be away until the afternoon. So sleep well and dream well. With a courteous bow, he opened for me himself the door to the octagonal room, and I entered my bedroom. I am all in a sea of wonders. I doubt, I fear, I think strange things which I dare not confess to my own soul. God keep me, if only for the sake of those dear to me. 7 May. So he skips a day. I don't know what happened on the 6th. He skips a day. I think I'm gonna stop right there. I'm gonna stop right there. On page 19. Page 19. It's so descriptive. I'm like, it's you gotta read it a couple times just cause like I would have to probably read it again just to really understand, like, yo, I get he's trying to be descriptive, but the sentences can be so long and drawn out. Like, as I'm sitting here trying to read it, I'm like, yo, I keep thinking the sentence is about to end or something. Like, that's what keep messing me up. I think there's no flow to the sentences. Like, I can't catch a flow. Like, okay, I'm reading this sentence. Like, I be thinking the sentence is about to end and it keeps going. Like, these are extremely long sentences. Now, I also don't know. You know how sometimes, like, if you read a lot, or yeah, it's just like you reading a lot. You can kind of build up some type of, I don't know how to explain it. But if you read a lot, you'll be able to, like, you can understand those long sentences. Or you can put them together. Like, you can hold thoughts a little bit longer. And so a part of me wants to see if, like, that's what will strengthen up and come back to me. Like, all right, I can really put you know what I'm saying, all together. But a part of me is like, I kind of, like, if it's important, why didn't that happen while I was reading? Why didn't that happen while I was doing the fashion show? I just need some lightning. I want to put that all together. Like, right now, if I was reading a book by myself and I wasn't just trying to read it, whatchamacallit, I would have to read the sentences a couple of times. I would have to read each one of the sentences a couple of times. Because, like, there's a first part of the sentence, and then there's so much descriptive, and then it ends, and then it goes back to what the original part was. There's a lot of filler within the sentences. And that's kind of, like, messing me up, because I'm trying to keep track of everything. So, like, he's trying to describe what the count looks like, what they got for dinner, what it's like inside the room. And those are great for, like, especially if you're trying to turn. Damn, I'm glad I put hand sanitizer on, but I got gas, and this is the hand that I use to pump gas. So I'm like, I hope I don't fucking break out or some shit. But yeah, that's shit. It's fucking me up, man. Like for somebody with an imagination, the coolest part so far was the part with the wolves surrounding the horses. And like visualizing that was cool. So, you have knowledge of something before. So like, like right now, everybody knows Dracula's a vampire, right? Everybody knows Dracula's a vampire. So a part of me just wants, is kind of like, yo, what if I didn't know that what this book was going towards? Or I didn't know what was about to happen in this book. Like, how would things be? Like, how would I be interpreting things? So I already know when he was like, yeah, I have to go away. I won't be back until the afternoon. He said, you can sleep all as long as you want. But I won't be back until the afternoon. But the fact that I know that that Dracula's a vampire, so he's really getting away. That's his slick way of getting away before the whatchamacallit. Like, it would, like that would be such of a plot twist later when you figure out, oh man, he's a vampire. So that's why he was going away doing the whatchamacallit. But you don't know that. But you wouldn't know that until later on in the book if you had never known what Dracula was. So. But me reading them, like, I kind of already know that. So that's something as well. I'm trying to think. A part of me, like, with the whole, what's the book? The Great Gatsby. I saw that movie first. I want to read a book, but I want to kind of read a book that I don't know nothing about it. So when things is happening, I'm like, oh, like this is how I want to be surprised. But I want the book to be good though. I want the book to be good, and I'm gonna be surprised. Like, oh snap, what's happening? What's going on next? But he's doing a good job of like describing, because it's so descriptive. He's doing a good job of describing the scene, the setting, the people, what the people are wearing, what they look like. And that's really good for like a historian. That's really good for a historian. So let's say all these people at the current state and time no longer live, right? They no longer exist. But they find a journal from one of us, right? And so one of us is saying, nah, this is how the people look, this is how they dress, this is how they talk, this and the third, boom, boom, boom. Like, how descriptive you would have to be for somebody in the future to understand what we look like, what we talk like, how we move and stuff like that. Yeah, and you never know what they're gonna get, you know what I'm saying? Some history books. I don't know. We don't I don't know what the history books was like in, the Romans and the Greekans and this and that. The Grecians. That, and they say that the Library of Alexandria got burnt down and da da da. You never know. You never know, man. So he's doing a good job of describing everybody. I don't even know what year it's supposed to be set in. I don't even know what year it's supposed to be set in. And now I'm also kind of wondering, like, I don't even know where he's from. Like, is this just his imagination? Or is he from England? And does he travel Europe? And has he seen castles? Did he tour a castle and base his story off a castle that he actually saw? Or is this just all his imagination? And for something to be his imagination, you then kind of want to give him more credit for how descriptive he's being. I will say that is one thing that is a noticeable difference between other books that I read. He is describing almost what every person looks like. He's describing like, this is what they're wearing. This is how they're talking. I'm not gonna say most books are basic, but a lot of books will just say, this person looked at me and said this. Looked at me and did this. Like, it's very basic. And you know, with the way that this book and even the wording and the phrasing, that can lose a person. There have been about, I can safely say 3, but there's been a couple words I'm like, yo, I don't know what this word means. But that's how you expand your vocabulary, though. Like the word, and now it's like stuck in my head too. Goitre. I don't know what that word means. I don't know how to pronounce it for real. There was another word I just read, and I didn't know what that word meant either. It makes it a difficult read. And then some words you know what they mean, but it's like, what was the other word? Or phrasing. Like when he said people kept crossing themselves. So what the fuck what is he talking about? I'm trying to find the other word. I was like, yo. This word. I know the first part is physio. Physio. The last part is gnomy. Gnomy. And this, it looked like word like you might not even pronounce the G. Physiognomy. And then it has that old English, kinda sorta. That old English. Kinda messing me up. I want to get better at it. I hope that as I go along, I get a little smoother with it. But right now, I've been stumbling over these sentences because I be thinking the sentence about to end. This is say when you reading out loud, you got to read ahead. Shit. It's like when you reading out loud, you technically have to read ahead. And that's why it makes it, when you're reading out loud, you can read it as you're reading it, but then this is like why I'm getting stuck and stumbling sometimes. But it's like you have to, the time it takes, and it's a skill just being able to read ahead and then go back and read it out loud. So there's a couple ways I can go about it. If I want to clean it up, I can probably read a portion beforehand and then read it out loud. That'll give me time to puff the cigar pipe, so I don't have to keep relighting it. But I read today. I know that much. I knocked it out the way. I didn't save it for the morning. I read. Only thing that it for today. Crop tops, Beyblade.